What happens when a guy from the city accidentally contacts a guy from the country? It's not what you think. They strike up a conversation and same difference is created. JD and Kory talk the whole gamut of life as they each see it through the prism of race. One is a 6'4" black man and one is a 5'4" white man. Tune in and find out which is which. Agree or disagree, they will make you think, strike emotional chords, and more. Stick around. You might just learn something. Welcome to Same Difference with your hosts, JD and Kory. We're sharing our stories and how our stories impacted our approach to life. We take our perspectives into having dialogue about real life topics. Welcome back, everybody. It is time for another episode of Same Difference Podcast with the good doctor, JD Mass.
And my good friend, Kory May. Kory, how are you today?
I am well, my friend. You know, before we get too far afield, we should probably tell our listeners that we've never met. And not only have we never met, we don't script any of our conversations. If you've been paying attention from our first episode up to the present, I'm fairly certain you're starting to understand that we're getting to know each other at the same time you're getting to know us. One of the extensions of that plan is this. When the weather gets good, I'm going to go down to St. Louis and meet JD for the first time. And at some point during the summer, JD's going to come up here to Iowa City, and we're going to see each other's respective lives. We're probably going to have video so that you can see it on our website, but it will allow us, that's JD, me, and you as listeners, to see really what our lives are like. All that being said, it's good to see you, sir, and
great to see you. And we got to send a shout out to VPR. Maybe we'll get them to come down as well, and all of us will unite somewhere in this cornfield, as New Yorkers like to think we all are in.
Yeah, I know that the flyover country, that's what they call it, flyover country. Because you have to fly over it to get to somewhere else. But
right.
People live here.
Well, I remember when some of my guys I met in New York, my roommates at Ohio State, and we went downtown to Columbus, and they went, no, this can't be downtown. There's like 7 buildings down here. And it didn't hit me until when my days in working with Nellie, when I went to New York, and I remember being in buildings just looking for miles down the road of just buildings after buildings after buildings, going, oh yeah, this is a different monster than the rest of us. I came home, like Cat Williams said about going to Martin Lawrence's house and then coming home. I come home like, look at this little shit. Like St. Louis doesn't have any kind of skyscraper.
Right. Shout out to DJ FMI and Kiana the Goddess. We couldn't do it without them. And shout out to all of our listeners. We can't do this without you. Anything that you want to ask, drop it. We'll give you the information at the end of the hour.
Yes.
So where were we, JD? We were talking about college, right?
Yes, Kory. So let's jump into Iowa. You're back. You're in the groove. You started to tell us a bit about it. You were going to Washington during the summer. What's going on with you? What's the transformation? Are you aware that you're becoming an adult at this point?
Oh yeah. Because I got to pay my own bills. I have to.
Okay.
I have rent to pay. I've got to cover my own food, and I've got to pay for school. Now, back in the 80s, tuition wasn't crazy, right?
Right.
But tuition might have been what? Oh, geez. Let's say $3,200 for $3,200 per or 1,600 or so for the semester. And we look at that and we laugh. But
Right.
you also have to understand that minimum wage was $3.35 back then. So you could work your backside off and still pay for an apartment, still pay for food, still pay for tuition. What this was when I worked in the summers was I would pay for rent. I'd send rent money home to my roommates, and then I would pay for my for school, because I was getting $15 or $16 an hour working construction. And that made me think like, oh my gosh, I've got deep pockets. My bag is thick. And you're able to do that. I was able to do that. So let's get a few things straight. I've gotten some things twisted in my timeline. There was a woman that I was seeing before I went out to Washington, D.C. She was 6'1". She was a redhead. That's a theme that comes back to haunt me over and over again. And we had been in a committed, kind of serious relationship. But when I tell her I'm going to Washington, she's not liking it. And I say, well, hey, we can talk every day. There's not a big problem. And I wasn't thinking about the difficulty of paying long distance phone bills. Because back then,
oh yeah,
you had
that was a deal.
That was a long distance bill that would rack up quickly.
That was a deal.
You would try to call nights and weekends. So you're trying to call after 10 o'clock, before 8 a.m. And if you called during the daytime long distance, you were going to get socked.
They used to advertise calling cards like they advertise cell phone plans right now.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, my goodness.
So to all the young people who are listening to this, if you're happy about your cell phone, or if you're unhappy about your cell phone, be happy about it, because your long distance charges would have been insane, especially if you were dating somebody out of state. She's upset. I don't know what's going on. So I say, well, why don't we break up for the summer? And she says, fine. And I take that as a thought to go ahead. I've broken up. I didn't want to break up, but I suggested if it's going to make you happier. And she says, she takes me up on it. So we fight after we break up, which didn't make any sense to me. So breaking
up usually doesn't make sense. Go ahead.
So I end up meeting another young woman who's going to be going out to the East Coast sometime. Now, I'm not familiar with East Coast geography. She's going to be in New Jersey. I'm going to be in DC. I think it's the East Coast, and it's going to be pretty close. And on paper, it looks close. Well, it still takes time to get there. And we end up, all these opportunities to meet end up being dangled, and we never meet up. So I tried to call the ex, just checking up. I call, leave messages. She never answers for the entire summer. So I come back, and one of her friends says, oh, she's seeing somebody else. And I'm like, what the heck? And that was when it dawned on me I shouldn't have said, hey, why don't we break up for the summer? Now, one of her friends, the same friend that says she's seeing somebody else, was that you're exciting, but he's just there, which told me that it wasn't so much about Kory, the personality. She was looking for someone who is acceptable to her parents. And that one smacked me hard in the face. Again, it's the 80s. Interracial relationships are not particularly fully embraced unless I was really wealthy, which I wasn't.
Shit, in some places they aren't even legal. Go ahead.
I wasn't a college athlete either. I was just a guy. I was just a black guy. And that kind of threw me into a tailspin because I wasn't quite sure what this was doing. Again, I didn't date until I was a sophomore in college. And a lot of that braggadocio, that locker room talk that happens about one's experiences with the ladies just became inflated. So all through high school, guys, talk stuff about their experience and how fantastic a lover they are. I'm not sure I could have found a woman with a map. So the first time I have an experience with a woman, this happens prior to my sophomore year. It is just a horrific incident. It is absolutely horrific.
Be gentle on yourself, sir.
Oh. It's kind of like a mystery. It was like, who done it? So it started and it was over and I wasn't sure what happened and I felt horrible and remorseful and thought like, I mean, and this is country mouse at his best. Like, I guess this means I won't wear white at my wedding. And it's kind of like getting what's the childhood book? If you give the mouse a cookie, that's what the mouse wants all the time. Yeah, that was Whew.
So after all that pressure over all them years, I blow your head off. And you went running.
And I look back with regret on that because had I had more knowledge, I would have had more mature attitudes. And that was again, it's my responsibility and my fault. I'll take ownership of it. But it really does start to frame my mindset of what I'm looking for. And now I wasn't seeing women in 3 dimensions as full, just real people. And you have to break through the locker room talk and the media manipulation on who people are. We are often fed one image of something and run toward that, and especially if we are fed another media image, run away from that. And these are just some revelations that I've had. We are run toward a Western civilized aesthetic for beauty, but not given the support structure that suggests this woman is a living, breathing creature with feelings and emotions and hopes and dreams. And if we're just like, this is a cardboard model, this is a 2-dimensional photographic image, you are programmed to desire that. That's all that you do.
Did the race, like I spoke to somebody, I've dated quite a few black women in my time, and a friend of mine who had a cousin that was married to a white woman, he's a black man, he wanted to put us on the phone so we could talk about what we liked about and why we made the choices that way. And for him, he said it literally for him was, I was told all my life, you can't have this. And as soon as I could get it, I tried it, I liked it, and I wanted it. Did that play a role in all for you? And it might have even played a role for some of them as well.
You are not wrong.
Yeah,
you are not wrong. That is a pretty good thing. That's a pretty good assessment. if you say something is taboo and you can't have it, at some point or another, there are going to be people who break through that forbidden
Right.
ideal and go for that thing that is supposedly forbidden.
Yeah.
And you're right. You're 100% right about that. And it works the opposite way. Stay away from black men. Stay away from large black men. Stay away. Stay away. Stay away. They're dangerous. Now, some people are indeed frightened. Other people are like, no, I'm not frightened. I find you attractive. Let's do something about it.
Right. And I'm curious. Yep.
And we often, your friend's assessment is very accurate, very telling. So here we are going to school, or here I am going to school, University of Iowa, predominantly white campus, and we desire the things that we see every day, right?
Right.
And so eventually this becomes a conversation. So I had lots of white friends that were just friends, people that we would that I would go hang out with, and we'd go dancing and on the weekends. And I was trying to create a social life that I didn't have because I wasn't living in the dormitories. When you are living with the dormitories, you have some enforced social life because you got to get along with your roommate, and you've got to get along in this giant structure with thousands of people living in a relatively small space. I didn't have that. So between stepping into the real world and having to pay my own bills and living off campus in an apartment where I did have roommates, or a roommate or possibly two at a time, there is your social life is different. Your social life is a lot smaller. So how do you meet other people? You meet them either in class, you meet them on the job, or you meet them when you're out dating. I mean, you meet them when you're out socializing. And a lot of it was going downtown to the clubs. Downtown back then, there was the Great Pleasure Triangle on College Street. There was the Field House, which was a den of iniquity, if I can use an Old Testament statement. Then there was the let's see. Then there was the College Street Club, which was a haven of debauchery. And then there was Vito's, which was the least of the bad ones on College Street. If you went down the pedestrian mall, turned left on the Dubuque walkway, walked on Dubuque for about a block and a half, you would find Sports Column, which was a jock bar. There were so many bars downtown in Iowa City that there was always a clique or a crowd that you might know somebody, but some of the places just, they'd look at you a little sideways if you didn't fit in. Now, the Airliner was a Greek bar. Sports Column was a jock bar. The Deadwood was one of the towny bars, and it sounds just like it was. I'm fairly certain there are undiscovered bacteria that could cure almost everything residing there, and also at a place called Gabe's. Joe's Place. There was, let's see, Mickey's, Dublin Underground. There's a whole bunch of places. Fitzpatrick's. There are a whole bunch of places, and each of them had their own crowd. And it would have been cool to have been able to go on a tour to have known all of those places, but you hung with the places where your people went. And that was at Fieldhouse, College Street Club, or Vito's. Now, none of those places are currently open as constituted. No. There was a lot of underage drinking back then. As we had talked about before, if you were 19 before 19 before June 30th, 1986, then you were grandfathered in. And then there was this gap until the folks who were born after July 1st, 1986, had to wait 2 years until they turned 21.
Till they could drink. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But there was still a lot of underage drinking, and a lot of those establishments closed because, or got their license rescinded because there was underage.
They allowed it. Right.
Oh, yeah. School in and of itself wasn't particularly hard. It was more of a discipline thing. I'm working 2+ jobs to pay for school. And as a result, sometimes you work that many hours, you have nothing left to give.
And you have your own apartment at this time?
Oh yeah. I'm sharing it with another person.
But but you're not in parents' home.
No. As soon as I got out of school,
women into your back, window or anything.
No. Wouldn't do that. Yeah. But that independent living was giving me some thoughts of like, wow, this sure is fun. I work 40 hours, I go to school, I'm getting passing grades. And it wasn't that I hadn't had the burn to excel. It was like, yeah, I'm passing, and little or no effort. And I realized that if I'd made some more effort, and it wouldn't have been a tremendous amount of effort, I would have had really good grades. I'm not an idiot, which is a wonderful metric to have. Well, at least I'm not an idiot. But as I'm learning and living, this is where I am. And it's very easy to be kind of sucked in because it's comfortable. It's comfortable. There wasn't any pressure on me to get out and graduate. There wasn't any pressure. As long as I'm able to pay for it, why not? I'm having fun. I'm going to school, doing okay. But there wasn't the burning platform, meaning that I can't retreat. I can only go forward. And the burning platform wasn't really existing for me. There was no tick tock, you got to achieve. It was like, hey, you settled in, you got a couple of nickels in your pocket, you can afford to go downtown, you can pay your bills, you can pay your phone bill, as long as you're not dating somebody out of state. Everything's going okay. And that's what I would just say is the biggest point. It's everything's okay. It's average. It's not, we become blinded kind of to, hey, this is it. I'm all right.
To the routine.
Right.
Yeah. So you're going through it. Are you conscious of what you're studying as far as a major at this point in your sophomore year? Are you thinking about your professional career, just even if it's as a dream and a plan for the future? Are you like kind of picturing in your head what it's going to be like for you during that time and how that's shaping you for as you're becoming an adult now? Yeah.
So I'm in political science and I'm doing pretty well because I love this. I love politics. And Iowa every 4 years was ground zero for politics. Because we have the caucuses every 4 years, which is the bellwether.
Right.
Yeah. It's ground zero. So for those of you who don't know anything about the caucus system was set in the early 70s, and it allows a small state like Iowa and the candidates to practice retail politics, which means the state is big enough where you can get a pretty good idea of a candidate's popularity, but it's small enough where you can visit all 99 of the counties and move yourself from unmolded clay into a polished piece by the time the caucuses show up. So a caucus is essentially every town has a meeting place, and in that meeting place, you get to declare for which candidate you are. Now, the Republicans would have their side, their structures and their meeting places, and the Democrats would have their structures and meeting places, and they would be virtually the same structures, different meeting places, and you get to declare as a potential voter your support for a particular candidate. And this might be a high school gym. This could be a church reception area. It could be a bingo hall. But everybody that goes to that caucus area gets to declare their support. Now, there's a numerical threshold with which you have to meet in order to be considered viable in this caucus area. And if you're not viable, then the people who, the candidates who are indeed viable have surrogates who appeal to you so that you join and support their candidate. So ultimately you have you have several rounds so that you can declare a winner. This is ground zero in Iowa. Now, literally speaking, if I had a home large enough and enough money, I could have every presidential candidate on one or the other side come visit and talk in my house to people, and I would invite people and maybe even open up my home to the public and say, you can meet candidate X. And in a week, you can meet candidate Y. And you can meet candidate Z. All these people are undecided voters, and you get to appeal to them in a space that you might be less than 3 to 6 feet away from somebody. That's a different type of politicking than happens in a larger state.
Right.
And that caucus kind of energy infuses itself into Iowa every 4 years.
Wow. That's true. I forget about that. I'm used to complaining about what the heck is so special about Iowa, but
we're small.
I get it.
Small enough where, literally speaking, you could meet every presidential candidate at an event if you want to engage yourself in the political process. And back then, in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 10s, that was what happened. As soon as a presidential cycle would end, you would see people, as soon as an election cycle ends, you would see people bring their exploratory committees to Iowa and to start to build up their infrastructure to see whether they were viable to run in the next 4 years. As a political science student, that was exciting. That was positively exciting.
I can see the excitement now, and I think, you're about 25 years from being the perfect age for president. We should start now and get you going on the campaign tour, my friend.
As I'm pushing 80.
Exactly. That seems to be the age we're pushing towards. So
yes, you've heard enough about me and my love of my home state and my college years.
Yes. So I'm going to start my story off with just a little tidbit that's out of place, but goes back to that whole calling card thing. There was a Super Bowl commercial AT&T did, and it changed how I answered the phones, and quite a few of my friends answered the phones. And this guy would pick up a payphone, and he was trying to call his home, and he kept calling down to Fiji. And someone would answer the phone and go, Boulevanaga B-side. Boulevanaga B-side. And so literally, we didn't know what the heck he was saying. So we would say, whack at the B-side, whack at the B-side, right? Couldn't remember it, but for years, and I mean 20 plus years, because this commercial was in the late 80s, I think it was, or
Yes,
maybe,
it was.
yeah. And I've left Nelly, but I'm working with a gentleman that was at Universal, and he and my friend Mike and I formed a management company. We're trying to develop young artists, and his name is Big Paul Tuive, and Big Paul has recently passed, so R.I.P. to him.
Rest in
Big
peace.
Paul's uncle was a commercial producer director, and Big Paul's uncle Big Paul wants to show up, he's super cool. His name is George. He passed away 10 years ago, so rest in peace to him as well. But George, he's like, George did these Budweiser commercials, and George did the frog Budweiser Bud.
Yeah.
Some of those. He did a couple of the What's Up and all of these. And then he shows us the AT&T commercial, and it is George answering the phone. That's his only time he's ever been in one of his commercials, going, Boulevard, I got B-side. And me and Mike went nuts, like we had just met Michael Jackson or somebody. Like, you don't even know you changed our life. And so that was such a great moment. And they actually taught me at that moment. He is saying welcome down to the beachside, but he's not going welcome to the beachside. He's actually saying Bule Vanaka beachside. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I learned it. I had them type it out for me, and I learned it so that I would say it right from that point on. So
I love it.
Little side note on that.
Oh, that's a great story. All right. Now, you warmed my heart with that one, because I remember all those commercials, Budweiser.
Right.
I remember that the beachside commercial from AT&T. And now I want to hear your remembrances of, we were talking about the end of your house arrest after your time at the Ohio State University, and your dad locked you away.
Right. And so I spent the next semester, the second freshman year of my college career, at Webster University, a local university here in St. Louis, at night. So I was now amongst a lot of elders, to me, people in their 30s, 40s, going back to school, who worked professionally during the day, and some college age students my age, but for the most part, I was in a more adult crowd, and I didn't have anything to do. I would sit at home. So my father's basement, in his house, he had his basement, he had like a ranch style house, 3-bedroom house. So his basement was long, and he cut it in half, where half of it was built out, and that was my bedroom. But I had like a ping pong table in the bedroom. I had, it was a lot of space down there, so I could have a lot of people fit over there. I had 2 beds down there, full size and whatnot. Like, there was a good amount of space in this area for me to, at least, even though I'm on house arrest, it was not a bad little living space. Right. And I mean, I stayed in that. I was so scared of him for that semester that I, not that he was going to physically harm me, but just that I knew I had fucked up royally, and I was going to go. So I would kind of go up, get something to eat, but I was not hanging out upstairs. And my friends would come over, and sometimes if it was late at night, because it was the basement, they could just slide into one of those basement windows, and he had this big, beautiful closet built that I think was built before he got there, and it was cedar wood. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know, cedar wood absorbs the smell of anything, and we put it to the test because we smoked so much marijuana in that closet. And it tremendously absorbed this smell of it, and that was in the non-built out part of the basement, the unfinished part. So that was our routine: bring over some beers, bring over some weed, and come hang out with me. And I didn't have anything else to do besides my homework, and started working at Papa John's Pizzas and doing deliveries, and that was it. If I got off early, I might go to a friend's house for that little bit of time, because at least he knew I was off at 9 and it was 7, and I got to finally see and hang out for a little while. But I got the best grades I've ever gotten in my school career, probably, during that semester.
So was that a function of you not having anything else to do, or you
Yeah.
being surrounded by people who were deliberate and intentional about learning?
Mostly the first. I didn't have anything else to do. And then I recognized, oh, when I apply myself, I get good grades. Okay, this isn't that challenging. I just need to do it. Which I had always said, even going through high school, when I get to college, I plan on studying. I just didn't want to study before then. I recognized that I needed those skills, and that really gave me the opportunity to start honing in on my skills for studying. But Webster wasn't an accredited business school. One of my close friends, who was a year older than me, he's known me longer than anybody but Shondo and Mike, as far as my friends go. His name is Topher. He and Mike are best friends. And Topher went to elementary school through high school with us, and he was at a historically Black college called Harris Stowe, right next to St. Louis U, and he was transferring to St. Louis U to play baseball. And so when I got there, I wanted to go to St. Louis. When I started talking to him, I wanted to go to St. Louis U too. And that's where I ended up transferring. And when I transferred, St. Louis U was like, great, here's how this is going to work. We don't really believe Webster is an accredited school for all your business courses that you took coming in. Yeah, we're going to just give you elective credit, but you're going to have to take all of those over again in our system. And so I ended up having to do a whole nother year of school because of that. Basically, I graduated with 140 credits, and and I only, everybody else needed 120 credit hours.
Right.
So, but I wanted to go there. And that was a big enough campus, and to, enjoy myself. And this was kind of right around the time that Larry Hughes was coming. I think he came 1 year after me, Larry Hughes and Justin Tatum. And so St. Louis U was always had a pretty decent basketball team, not the greatest, but we had a good enough one. And my dad had season tickets to it from when I was in middle school, and he still has season tickets to this day. And it's an inexpensive season ticket still to this day. I mean, we had a decent enough team last year, and I think his average seat cost was $12, right? And so
they're the Billikens, right?
The Billikens, which I still have no idea what that is, other than some fictional Christian character.
I was about to ask you exactly what a Billiken was. And was Rick Majerus your coach while you were there?
Charlie Spoonhour was the coach when I was there. Rick Majerus came a little later. Yeah. And so there was definitely buzz when Larry Hughes came, because Dick Vitale loved some Larry Hughes, and he was a diaper dandy.
Oh yeah.
and all of that. So we got great buzz there. And, just like at Ohio State, the a significant of the Black population that was popular was the athletes, the basketball players. So Topher and I hung out with them quite often. Another friend that was quite a little bit older than us, but close with Topher's family, named Dedrick, went to SLU, and so the three of us really kind of formed a bond, and that became big for us, to get, we leaned on each other to kind of get through the hard times, and we met other friends there too. One of my whole crew's closest friends now is a guy that went to our rival high school, Ladue, and his he was in our business school with us, and we just used to laugh at him because he would ask questions that were so off the wall. We'd be talking about one part of the business textbook, and he'd be asking real life questions, but they'd sort of be nothing to do with what's going to be put on the test and everything like that. And Topher and I loved him for it. His name was D. Denham.
Now, St. Louis U is there. Harrison Stowe is there.
Harris Stowe is there.
Harris Stowe, and then also Wash U is there as well, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Did you have any interaction with Wash U? Is there a rivalry between the schools?
Well, there's Wash U's D3 sports, so there's no rivalry in the sports side of things. There's a rivalry, really more so, in who can buy up more of the real estate of St. Louis, right? Who has a greater impact on the city. So from a sports standpoint, St. Louis U does. From a social justice standpoint, St. Louis U does. Wash U, from the prestigious standpoint, they wanted to be the Harvard of the Midwest, right? And so they're a very high sedity spot, and they're in University City, which is part of the name. Reason why we have the name. I think it might be the reason why we have the name University City, and then we named our streets after universities. So, like, I grew up on Princeton. One block over was Cornell. The next block was Stanford. When I first moved next to Shondo, it was Colgate. It was Amherst, Tulane. On and on and on, and all these college names.
So just before we get into your next question, you used a term that may confuse some of our listeners. Sedity. Would you define what sedity is?
Oh. Sedity, as I know it and I use it, is kind of stuck up, especially when you put high sedity, right? It's that high prestige kind of, right, as far as they see themselves, and so yeah, if we think you're stuck up, then that high sedity person over there.
And I just want everyone to know it's AAVE, African American Vernacular English sedity. I wanted to make sure that some of our listeners weren't listening and rewind 10 seconds. What was that? What was that?
Thank you, because I sometimes don't know the difference of the two. where one cultural language starts and the other ends.
The irony that I'm having you define that is absolutely rich.
Yes.
Oh, whew. Now back to the story. I'm sorry. So tell me about your time at Wash U.
Webster.
No, not Wash U. It's St. Louis U. Excuse me. Forgive me.
St.
My
Louis
bad.
U, yeah.
So they've admitted you, and they've said your Webster time, nice, pat on the back for that, but you got to start all over. How did you react to that?
How did I react to that? I was a little bit disturbed, but again, I mean, it's a comfortable time. I wanted to be there for sure. And, fortunately, my grandfather left enough money for me to have a college fund. And so I wasn't concerned as much about payments, although St. Louis U has nothing to do with the city as far as funding or anything like that. This is a private Jesuit university. You are not allowed to spell the name St. Louis University. You must spell out SAINT. This There is a big statue of Saint Louis on the campus. So they are truly a Jesuit university. That was the other reason why I also had to add credit hours, was you had to take three theology, or no, two theology, two ethics, and philosophy, they called it, which one had to be ethics. And then you had to take one more of either one of those, but basically an entire semester worth of courses in that subject realm. And
tell me, how did that affect you? I mean, learning
So-
the Jesuit and the ethics and all that.
right. So it was definitely different, right? And I remember a couple of things particularly. One was theology. This teacher was off the chain and off the wall and just very different. And he taught us about Buddhism and other cultures, and the students were pissed. I loved him. Now, mind you, my third full year of smoking weed pretty regularly. And that's an important thing, because during my time of smoking, I start to really go, my grandmother used to say, you're not religious, you're spiritual. Because I certainly challenged all the religious writings and teachings as if they were exactly factual truths and this, that, and the other. But I didn't want to just be godless, so to speak. And so sometimes I would, be in my car smoking and looking out at the world and going, wow, look at the trees and look at the sky and look at the beauty of it all and look at all of this. And literally he taught kind of like that. Like, hey, this is a beautiful creation that we have here, and we should be understanding these different cultures. And I was like, hook, sink, loved him. He got fired the next year. Nobody else liked him very much, but I loved him. And that put me on a path towards, okay, like let me figure out my spirituality at a deeper level. The next course I got to take was history of anti-Semitism. And I did that to make Grandpa happy, but I actually really liked that course as well. I really liked the teacher. He and I connected. He was an older man. I don't know if you've ever seen The Sword and the Stone, the Disney movie, but he had this long Merlin like beard and whatnot. And I remember the very first day of class for that, he gave us an assignment to take home, and it talked about and he asked us to define what was racist about this article. And the article was written about reporting of these two Black children that went to this white school, and how they were called the N-words by this person, and how this was written on, their lockers, and the teachers did that, and the principal didn't help them at all, and blah, 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 blah. And they had to go through all of these different things. And when they would walk home, the people would throw rocks at them. And when they went to the store, they weren't allowed to do this, and all of these different things. And I remember writing my answers out, and then him asking the students, and they would say, well, it was racist when the students did this, and it was racist when the teachers did this, and it was racist when the store did that. And like all of them had the same kind of answers. And he was like, okay, somebody else give me something different. And then so they put their hands down and I put my hand up and I said, if they're all doing it, then this was a systemic design, right? This was a cultural practice. And he said, that is what I hope you all get out of this whole course, is to be able to understand this is systemic. This isn't these individual incidents. And he was like, that's what I want. And so he kind of, grabbed me and said, anytime you want to talk, let's talk. And that was very helpful to me. At one point, halfway through, the students were like, okay, we get it. We're anti-Semitic and all of this, but you're only saying that because you're a Jewish guy. And, you're coming from just this place of kind of victimhood and blah, 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 blah. And he said, I'm not actually. I'm a Roman Catholic.
Oh,
and that shut everybody down.
Oh,
And
I
he
love
said, this is our history. If we're going to change it, we need to know it. And it's not to say you should feel bad about what everybody else did as much as you should learn. If you don't like it, let's not practice those things again. And I was like, wow, that was because I just knew he was probably Jewish too. And when he did that, he messed them up.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
Mind you, same time I'm going through a world history course, and I say that with quotations around it, that the professor comes with his priest collar and he's in there talking to us about the history. And first thing he starts talking about in the history of Christianity is Jesus brought love to the table and the Jews didn't know how to love, and before that, and all of these things. And
oh, Lord.
And I was like, wow. And then he spoke about, and we won the wars because God was on our side, and that's how we know we're right. And I was like, are you really saying this in this class? And I went back to that other professor that taught the history of anti-Semitism. And I said, this is what I'm being taught. He said, I know. And that's why I, at my age, am still going, because I can't let that be the only voice in the school. That's ridiculous. And that was eye-opening for me to experience that, okay, somebody can get away with teaching this and they still promote this on the other side. And so that was cool. I remember, speaking of my boy D Denham, he was in that class and I was challenging that all day. Like, are you serious? And then at one point he said, so we're not going to talk about these Eastern cultures, Chinese, African, they never change. There's nothing to talk about. And I was like, wow. So we're just going to talk about this world history from this European kind of standpoint. And we're not going to get any other bits of information about them. We don't even get to write a paper on them or anything. We're just going to learn that they weren't that important because they didn't change. And really, they didn't win the war. So God wasn't on their side anyway. And I was like, man, this is deep that you're comfortable saying that. And it didn't really hit for me until I started writing my book. And when I was writing my book, a few of the friends that I had that went to Catholic school said that that's what they were taught, that we won the war because God was on our side. And I was like, oh, wow, that wasn't just him. That was not a one-off thing. They're like, no, this is a well-taught, throughout these schools. And both of them went to different schools. This was a thing. So, yeah, that was eye-opening.
Wow. Okay, so now I'm going to pull JD experience from back then to the present. If I'm going to be controversial here.
Okay, bring it.
Is if we teach the history of anti-Semitism, is that akin, and pointing out the structures, is that akin to what critical race theory is?
Let me see if I understand the question. I had a public school education, so you're going to have to excuse me a little.
I had a public school education too. I wasn't, my worldview was not informed by the Jesuit.
No, I know. I'm just trying to see if that sounds very complicated as a question for me.
Well, it can be a
Um,
cliffhanger if you need more time,
well,
because we are
no,
getting to the top of the
so
hour.
I don't know if I'm answering exactly what you're asking, is what I'm saying. Uh, for me, yes, the idea of critical race theory one has been bastardized so much because it's truly about, if we haven't healed from the harms that we've done, then naturally the systems that we make continue the process because we're in a competitive system
Yes.
and we haven't even the playing field when we built something on the backs and harm of somebody else.
Right.
If we're going to have a equal system where the systems of finance and education and media and everything else and representation are not racist, then we have to heal the harms of what we did prior to, or they naturally, by having some level of exclusivity in them by default and by representation and by qualifications, make it so that it continues the level of racial disparities.
Agreed.
Jewish folks have had reparations from in many contexts and can physically fit into our society.
Right.
And because of some of their harms from this white on white crime of Christian versus Jewish European, um, uh, fighting, because of their harm, they did develop some level of, we got to stick together. But their stick togetherness also was allowed at a much greater level because they were white. And it wasn't just allowed like, come this way and go in this door. It was allowed because it wasn't as noticeable. Right. And that is, I don't know if that answers the question the way you asked it, but that
let me stop stuttering. It begins to move us down a path.
Mhm.
Right. What I would like to have us at some point talk about are, if we are able to recognize systems
Right.
of oppression, and we are also able to recognize other systems of oppression, why is one being permitted, albeit restricted a little bit, and why is the other absolutely not being permitted and sought to be eliminated?
And I was having this conversation with somebody, and I definitely want to have this type of conversations later on down the road with us as we continue to develop our stories and really learn each other. But the idea of, there is a have and have nots, which means across every single race, there is a ton of have nots, and especially more and more these days because the haves are so few and they control so much. And
Right.
so it becomes either an oppression Olympics, which we'll get into at some point, or just a, hey, we're all being affected by this. Let that go because we need to stick together, without understanding the levels of healing that needs to happen. And so when you start to have that, I describe it as the oppression is happening from a power dynamic of wealth and control, and there's a target. Each layer of that target has a place on that target, but the bullseye is anti-Black racism, and I'll leave it at that.
Whew, folks, we're getting into it right now. Tune in next week so you can hear more of our stories. JD, before we go, tell them where they can reach us.
We can be found at samedifference.life on the internet. We can be reached at same difference broadcast at gmail.com. That's same difference broadcast at gmail.com. And Kory's phone number is, no, I'm just kidding.
Thanks, JD.
For sure.
Oh, this wraps up another episode of Same Difference Podcast. And I hope that you are enjoying this. Hit us with your questions. Ask us the things that aren't clear to you. Share this with your friends. If you are appreciating this and getting value out of it, let us know. We are striving to do better every single time. And if you listen to us from the first episode all the way to the present episode, you'll see that we're getting more comfortable with each other. And we hope that we're getting more comfortable with you as well.
Yes. Thank you all. Thank you, Kory.
Thank you.
Thank you, VPR. And next week, we'll be right back at it again.
Thanks much.
Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of Same Difference. We hope this journey through unique connections and diverse perspectives has left you with fresh insights and a broader understanding of the world we share.
We're humbled by your support and enthusiasm for the incredible stories and discussions we've shared. And remember, our mission is to foster critical thinking, embrace new perspectives, and spark conversations that bring us closer to an equitable world.
So, if you've enjoyed our podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us. Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps us reach even more listeners.
And if you have a story to share or a topic you'd like us to explore, don't hesitate to get in touch. We're always looking for new voices and fresh perspectives to feature on Same Difference.
Until next time, remember that our shared humanity is our most powerful asset, and by working together, we can bring about positive change.
Stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep making a difference. Thank you for being a part of Same Difference.
Take care, everyone. See you in the next episode.